I want to talk about why um a lot of Americans right now struggle to learn the second language. I think a lot of Americans struggle to learn the second language because the way that we're taught in school is not really productive. Now, I've been on the journey of learning my second language, which I would say is Spanish. Now, I'm not that far removed from people speaking two languages in my family because I'm from Louisiana, and if I go back to my grandparents and great grandparents, they spoke a dialect called French Creole, and like similar to like what Saint Lucians and people from African descent in the francophone world, right? But they passed a law in Louisiana where a lot of schools the federal government and state government basically banned the speaking of French in Louisiana. That's why a lot of people from Louisiana no longer speak French Creole because the Anglos, and I'm not saying this to be disrespectful, they want to have an English dominant society. They don't really want a society where other languages are spoken. And you can see that in modern times now too, where you have a lot of people who, you know, are upset with the Spanish speakers. They like learn English. They mad at the Arabic speakers. I mean, if you speak a language other than English, you kind of in the situation where either you have to speak English really, really well or you're criticized. And if you look at people from the United Kingdom and you look at people in the United States, and I'm in the United States and I speak English, like a lot of people, basically you're forced to be English dominant. And I learned when I started thinking about it, I think there's reasons for that that I'm not going to get into. But what I wanted to say was the way that we're taught to learn a second language, man, you're going to run into a lot of problems. One of the problems you're going to run into when you're trying to learn a second language, the way that they teach it in school, is in school, one, you're learning on the computer, which I think that we could get past that because now we live in such a internet based world, but that's the number one problem. You're not actually coming in contact with people that's fluent. Real problem. But you can still make do if you're determined. I started traveling to Spanish speaking worlds. Like when you learn in the language, you learn out of necessity. It gotta be it gotta be a real reason why you're learning something. In school, to land my plane, you're from a computer, not from native speakers. Secondly, you're in a situation where they teach you words instead of phrases. That's one of the biggest issues. Like, when I started focusing on phrases, then I began to be able to have conversations with people in my second language. And I'm definitely not fluent by any means. I'm still learning, but I'm doing way better now as I begun focusing on phrases than I was doing when I was focusing on uh words. I know people that spent years, because I've done the same thing, spent years, guys, focusing on words, how to say this, how to, and how we're taught is that the more words you learn, you're going to be able to speak to people. But it doesn't work like that when you're learning the language. Like a baby, you learn a phrase and then you could use the word that you learned in the phrase. For example, if I say coffee, if you teach me how to say cafe in Spanish, that's not really helping me. But if I say if I teach you how to say, or you teach me how to say, yo preparo uh, un cafe, like I prepared the coffee. Or if I teach you, hey, um, hola is a good start. But if I teach you how to say, like most people get in Spanish, we get stuck at hola, como estas, uh, estoy bien, et tu. That's where most people get stuck at. We don't know anything other than that. And I was like this for a long time. I could say hola, they say hola. I say bien, gracias, et tu. Now what? Now what you say? But because those were phrases that we learned, but we didn't learn how to take those phrases and go further. We didn't learn how to take those phrases and go further. So we got to learn more phrases. I think if we could have about 300 phrases in a back pocket that we know about heart, you could become fluent. You need about 1,000 phrases. I researched that they said an average native speaker of any language has about 10,000 words of their disposal to use. So if you have about 300 phrases, you can make so many different that equal close to about 10,000. Another thing is, since everything is English based, and overseas, I'll be overseas in Colombia or Cuba or Puerto Rico, and everything was in their language, and I would start thinking in their language. When I came back to the States, what I was, everything would be in English, and you fall back to your dominant language. So what I've been doing lately is, sorry for the noise. So what I've been doing lately is, if I drive trucks, I spend about 4 hours out of my day in Spanish mode, where I'm only consuming media in Spanish. And I kind of treat English as a gift. Like when I want to relax, I don't want to think so much. That's when I get into listen English. Um, I think that in school, the problem with the American school system, and I'm not bashing the United States, but the problem with the American school system is we teach facts in every subject, but we don't teach context. Context is how we learn, really. We don't learn a lot of context in anything. The problem why a lot of people struggle with math, they learn facts about math, but they don't learn how to use it contextually. They don't give you a lot of context. So you're taking a geometry class or a trigonometry, a statistics class, but you're just learning a bunch of facts. You're not actually using context on how to apply this in the real world. That's where people struggle. And that's why people say, well, what's the point of me learning this? Science. When I was applying for college, I took the ACT. I made a 27 on my science, which is a pretty high score or a decent score. It's above average. And I didn't even really study for science, but how I got that high score was I just focused on the context. I'm like, okay, science is basically we're combining reading and numbers. Okay, the reason why a lot of people struggle is that we get facts but no context in everything. The problem why people struggle with language is you can't do that with language. You can't learn. Well, I would say language use those other things and just learn a bunch of facts. But you're running the problems with them too. Okay, for example, context is the why something occurs and the how. The fact that it occurs is just the fact that, hey, this occurs naturally. But the why and the how is what we need when we trying to get context. And with language, where most people mess up is we start learning the alphabet, which is great, of the sounds, and then we learn a few introductory phrases, but then that's it. Like, but we should focus on learning phrases in context to different activities. Then we gotta use immersion as a tool. That's what I'm learning now. I'm just sharing with you what I've learned. immersion as a tool. You got to immerse yourself in a language. And a lot of times as adults, what happens is, I felt this too, we fear messing up. It's a lot of Americans, guys, that's actually downloaded a lot of different apps. I know I've have dictionary, Spanish dictionary on my phone. I had Duolingo, I had Babbel, I had Rock Languages, and it can kill your confidence. Like, man, I may pay $200-300 for courses trying to learn Spanish, and it can kill your confidence where you're in a situation where you're trying to learn this language but you're struggling and you don't know why you're struggling, but you're struggling because you're not studying the right things a lot of times. Next, I would say we struggle with the language situation because in our country is English dominant, and English is a language that's spoken around the world. So it's easy to say, well, I speak English, or I speak a decent enough English, I don't have to learn another language. False. Learning a second language could actually benefit you more than your first language because it gives you a whole new set of people to communicate with. Um, a new way to look at the world. Lastly, I would say if you learned your first language, I almost guarantee if you spent enough time, you could learn a second language. It's different if you never learned anything, you just can't speak. But the fact that you learn rules and dialect with one language, you're almost a shoe in if you spend enough time to learn a second language if you applied yourself. And that's where I will come to the third thing. The first would be the way it's taught. The second thing is that English is so dominant. The third thing I would say is time. Most people look at learning another language as I don't have enough time. But what they don't realize is that they do have enough time. The same things that you used to doing in your first language, whatever language you want to learn, if you start practicing saying and describing and talking in the of whatever you're doing, the activities in that second language, you would pick it up. And also I would say find good teachers, find people that's been in your position that learn what you're trying to learn. It's a lot of what I had to start doing. At first, I thought learning Spanish was kind of silly to me at first because I'm gonna just be real when I say this. I see a lot of black people speaking Spanish. So I'm like, well, what's the point of me speaking Spanish and all of the black people that I know, or people, the brown people that I would like to communicate with, because I come from a state and a culture where it's common for me to see people who look like me. Okay. So when I didn't see people that look like me speaking the second language like that, I didn't even connect the dots that's possible. It wasn't until, guys, I was about early 20s where I came into contact because I dated someone that spoke another language and they were black. And that's when it like a light bulb went off, like, oh, okay. And then when I went to their island and I seen how people spoke another language, it turned what I knew, because like I say, I had only been in the country where white, black, and everybody only spoke English. Nobody spoke a second language. And the people who did speak a second language were immigrants. So when you're coming from a culture like the United States, man, and everybody is speaking English, it can make you think maybe most Americans can't learn the second language. And then the way that they teach us in school is so whack, even though it's still strengths in that. If you could, you could, it's constructive things that they try to give you with the resources that they have. But I would say that ultimately, I don't think that the American school system wants or want Americans to be bilingual. I don't think that the American school system want Americans to be bilingual. And the reason why I say that is it would create too much competition if America was a bilingual society. It's bad enough people are struggling to find jobs and there's not enough jobs and people speak English. So a lot of Americans would lose their social position in the hierarchy if they were forced to have to speak a second language. And the reason why I wanted to learn Spanish is Latinos are the fastest growing demographic in the United States right now. I live in Houston, but in most of the United States, if we're going to be real, it's almost already, I'm not going to say almost, it's already two languages being spoken on a day-to-day basis. You could drive around and you could see signs in English and you could see signs in Spanish. So Spanish is all. If you live in the United States, man, I would, especially if you are a person that's a foundational Black American, I would encourage you to learn Spanish, man. And then I would even push it further to keep learning more. Um, I met a guy, man, one of the smartest people I met, Gino, from Colombia. Gino is a professional tour guide and attorney. Gino speaks 4 or 5 languages. He speaks Spanish, English, Portuguese, and Italian. He might speak another language after that. So Gino's a pretty deep guy. And uh Gino told me one day, man, uh he was like, Brian, if you want to learn Spanish, practice an hour a day. And man, guys, I'm gonna be real. Years went by and I would try, but I wasn't consistent with the hour a day. And I was busy learning other things, might I add. I was learning how to drive trucks. I was traveling a lot. I was learning insurance and real estate because I like to study. I like to learn new things. But at the time, I felt like an hour a day in this second language was just too much. But now, I would say that I'm dedicated to learning Spanish. I'm going to give myself another 4 years learning. I'm 30. Say by 35, I'm going to be fluent in Spanish. My goal is to be conversation the next 12 months. I'm practicing on my intensity, and I have immersion. I have immersion because I travel a lot. So I got native speakers like Gino, my girlfriend Delanise, who's Cuban. Asia is a Cubana, where I could speak with, and Delanise has helped me. So the people I want to shout out the people that's helped me. I'm sorry, it's some bugs out here. Um, my cousin John, he's been a huge, tremendous help and help build my confidence because he worked side by side with Latinos, and that's how he started learning. And he's self taught. The next person I would say is Delanise, from Cuba. She has been very patient and helped me. Gino, and I would also like to shout out the people that's on my. I have a YouTube account. I have two main YouTube accounts, and I have one that's I can only really listen to things in Spanish or explain in Spanish on this YouTube account. That's my goal. And then I have another YouTube account that's like my English YouTube account. And I had to do it like that because it's like I need an immersion. I need immersion. So like when you want to immerse yourself in the language, the easiest way to do it is to read more, listen more, talk more in that second language. But if you are constantly speaking your first language, and thinking in your first language is going to be harder for you to become fluent because your brain is not being signaled that it's time to learn something else. Your brain is a muscle, and humans crave understanding. So once you keep listening to something, even if you don't understand it, like the other day I was listening to a little kid speak. He came in, he was talking, he was telling his friend that he was going to the bathroom, but he said it in Spanish and I understood. I think that that's what really started. Like I've been traveling a lot. um I started understanding phrases and words that they would speak. And I was like, oh, I'm starting to understand it. Like it's clicking now. And so that's my plan. And that's why I think that most people don't learn the second language is that our society doesn't force them to learn. The way they're taught to learn is not really advantageous. It's not a lot of immersion. Like you got to immerse yourself in the language, the new language. English is so dominant here from the radio, from the television. If you're trying to learn another language, no matter what that language is, it's going to be difficult here. You will have to change your environment from the radio, your documents that you sign. You will have to start basically making yourself learn this second language. It has to be a necessity. And also, I would say that a lot of reason why people quit, they want to progress too soon, and I'm guilty of this too. they want to speak fluent in a couple months. And you got to realize when you're talking to adults or even kids, I always looked at Spanish for an example and said, man, if I could speak Spanish as good as a high school student, I'd be straight. That's good enough for me. I'd be fluent. Cause you think about a 16, 17-year old, they've been learning their language for 15, 16, 17 years. If I could speak as well as them in my second language, I could be understood by almost everyone. I even thought one day I was like, if I could speak a second language as good as a 12-year-old, as good as a preteen, I've done amazing. Cause you can talk to most young kids and they will have a good conversation with you. We have to realize like when you're learning another language, you don't have to get to a point where you're Shakespeare. You just gotta, or you're Miguel Garcia, the writer. You just gotta get to a point to where you could be understood. I believe that you could get to a point where people can understand what you're saying or attempting to say within a year. And I believe that you could kind of fix most grammar mistakes and things like that to where you could be more clearly understood within 2 to 3 years. And like my mom would always say, that time is going to pass anyway. So if you see these videos, welcome to my journey. Bienvenidos a mi canal. Me llamo Brian. Gracias. And hasta luego. Paz.